Hey guys, what's up? Baseball Lover 1984 coming at you. And well, I'm going to talk a little bit about to me anyway, the biggest trade that's kind of happened right now. And that is the Mets giving up long-term Mets player Brandon Nimmo to the Texas Rangers for Marcus Semien. As you guys know, I am a Mets fan. I mean, come on, I'm doing this right now in Mets regalia. But, I'm going to talk about this very bipartisanly. As much as I love Nimmo. But, this is something that we have to talk about. So, in the long run, do I honestly think that this could be a good thing for the Mets? In the long run, I do think it can be. Semien has played longer than Nimmo. I mean, Semien's been in the league since 2013 with the Chicago White Sox. But he is also older than Nimmo. So, I mean, there you go, too. That's one thing you do got to take into consideration. But, I mean, in general, it's like, let's just take a look at some of their stats. So we're going to start with games. So, obviously, games played in the time that Nimmo has been with the Mets. So 2016 to 2025. Nimmo has played 1,066 games. Where Marcus, obviously he's been in the league longer, has played 1,629 games. So obviously, again, though, it's, he's been in the league longer. Like I said, Nims, it goes to 2016, or what did I even say in his thank you video? I mean, technically, he's been with baseball since 2011, but, 2016 was his first time with the big club, with the Mets. So, from 2016 to 2025, that's the stats that I've got. Now we take a look at batting average. And, if you see me looking over here, that's because I've got my phone down here. I've got Marcus Semien's stats pulled up on Baseball Reference, where I actually have printed out the stats from Baseball Reference for Nimmo. So, okay. Nimmo's batting average from 16 to 25 was 262.262. Marcus's is .253. Now, there I will say, Nimmo is probably the better batter than Semien. I'll still stand by that. Batting average, it's the old adage, the numbers don't lie. So, I do honestly think that the Mets giving up Nimmo for Semien might hurt them in the end. But, I guess we'll find out. Now, with those at-bats, with that batting average, of course, at-bats have to come into play. Nimmo had in his career as a Met 3,723 at-bats. Marcus in his career has had 6,365 at-bats. Again, too, you got to take into consideration longer career. I'm going to keep referencing that because it's the truth. Now we can take a look at hits. Brendan had 974 hits in his 3,723 at-bats. where Marcus has had 1,000. Where was it? Where did it go? Here we go. 1,613 hits. Now, of course, with Nimmo, out of all those 974 hits, 188 of them were doubles, 32 were triples, 135 were home runs. As far as Marcus goes, out of those 1,613 hits, 323 of them were doubles, 36 were triples, 253 were home runs. So, I mean, again, it's... Even with the batting average, yes, Marcus does tend to get on base more. He tends to do a lot more of that more. So again, it's still hard to say. But, the numbers in a way aren't lying. I mean... Now let's take a look at, a big stat in baseball. Ribbies, ribeye steaks, RBIs, whatever the hell you want to call them. Nimmo had in his career 463 RBIs. Marcus, 801. Again, yes, longer career. Like I said, he started in 2013, so he has a good, 3 more years. Marcus has 3 more years on Brendan when it comes to, tenure in MLB. Now we take a look at just smaller stuff, stolen bases in his career. Nimmo has 54 stolen bases in his career, where Marcus has 139. Now, that's definitely a good thing. We know if he can get on base, we know he can steal. We know he can swipe a bag, which is something that this team needs. We need base stealers. We need guys who can advance without it having to be a hit or anything like that. We need guys to advance. Now let's see. We take a look at walks, which is a big important thing because a walk is still a way to get on base. And again, that's what we need, guys on base. You cannot score if you do not have guys on base. Now, Nimmo walked 524 times in his career as a Met. Marcus, 631. So, in a way, they're closer in walks. So, I mean, they can both still get on base, which is, again, something that's needed. Now, the final thing I'm going to take a look at are how many times did they strike out. Nimmo in his career struck out 974 times. Marcus in his career 1,305 times. Now that's something where I do look at, Nimmo struck out way less than Semien. But again too, Semien 3 more years in the league. He's going to strike out more. But, honestly, looking at the numbers, I'm still semi-torn. My loyalties lie with Nimmo. As I said in his thank you video, he started out with the Mets. He started out 2011 with the Gulf Coast Mets and the Kingsport Mets of the Appalachian League. Going to Brooklyn. He was a Savannah Sand Gnat. He was back when they were still the not Brooklyn Mets, the Binghamton Mets, before they were the Rumble Ponies. He was back when we still had Vegas as our AAA team, and they were the 51s before they were the Aviators. I mean, what else can I really say? Where, Marcus doesn't really have a team connection in a sense. Like I said, I'm looking at Baseball Reference right now from 2013 until last season. 2013 and 14 he was with the White Sox. 15, 16, 17 and 8 hold on. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20 he was an Athletic. 21 he was a Blue Jay. And then 22 through last season, he was a Ranger. I mean, okay, I understand it's baseball. I understand, guys are going to move around team to team to team. That's how it works. But, to see a guy like Nimmo, who, again, all he knows is the New York Mets. I mean, hell, the guy was building a house and actually got the house built finally in St. Lucie. In Port St. Lucie. That's where his family resides. Because, he thought he was going to be a Met for life. And, he wanted to be a Met for life. And that's something when you as a player, normally it's you go where the money is. And, I've always said I cannot fault players for that. It's like, people ask me because they also know that I root for the Red Sox. It's like, how did I feel back when Johnny Damon, went from, Boston and eventually became a New York Yankee? My answer was, I can't blame the guy. He went with the money. I mean, it's still a job. It's still a business. Even though, yes, I believe the one line in Mr. Baseball, which is, baseball is grown men getting paid to play a game. And games are supposed to be fun. But to the same extent, no matter what, it still comes down to, it's still your job. And where, yes, I still do believe, yes, it's a game. Games are supposed to be fun. But in the end, it still comes down to, this is your job. And, you have to go where the money is for your job. It's like the same thing. Like, I'm a diehard hockey fan. I'm a diehard New Jersey Devils fan. If a Devils player ended up going to, to use one of the two biggest rivals to the Devils, to the Rangers or to the Flyers, God forbid the Flyers. Despise the Flyers. But you know what? To the same extent, again, it's almost like my hatred for the Yankees. I'd be the first one to say they went for the money. I understand. It's still their job. They still need to provide for their family. But, in the end, like I said, I still don't know. I'm still on the fence. Could Semien be a good fit for the Mets? Definitely. He's a 3-time All-Star. He's a World Series champion. So, we have that coming in. We have somebody else with a ring who understands that mentality of winning a World Series. Which is what we want. Again, we haven't had a ring on our finger since 1986. We've come close numerous times. 2000, we lost to the Yankees. 2015, we lost to the Royals. Just 2 seasons ago, we almost made it to the World Series. But we lost in the NLCS to the Dodgers. And like I said, it's going to be something, everybody was saying the same thing like about Soto. Soto becoming a Met from being a Yankee. And, it's like, will he fit the team persona? Will he fit the mold? Everything like that. And even to that, I think he has. I think he was a good fit for the Mets this season. Yes, he's still getting used to the team. He's still getting used to the clubhouse. He's still getting used to the atmosphere of playing Mets baseball. You go from, and I'm still going to call it this no matter what, you go from a cathedral like Yankee Stadium to Citi Field. Which, yes, to us Mets fans, that's our cathedral. But, you go from a fan base like the Yankees to a fan base like the Mets. And honestly, I'm the first one to say this. Yankee fans are more rabid than Mets fans. Always have been. Yes, we have the 7-line army, but we haven't had the 7-line army for that long. The bleacher creatures have been around forever. And, even so many players have always said, you go to play in Yankee Stadium, and it's a whole different beast than going into any other stadium. And, I'm not even talking about in, like, a smaller market area. Like, I'm even talking about, you compare going to Yankee Stadium compared to going to Shea Ravine in L.A. for the Dodgers, or you go to Anaheim for the Angels. You go to San Diego for the Padres. You go to San Francisco for the Giants. You go up to Boston for the Red Sox. You do go to Philly for the Phillies. And, those are big market areas. But it's like, it's not the same. Even to a point, too, coming to Queens to play us, to play the Mets. It's not the same as going into Yankee Stadium and playing the Yankees. There's still a reason why, yeah, I hate the Yankees. I do. But, I still have a Yankees jersey in my collection. I still have a Yankees hat in my collection. And I still want to get to Yankee Stadium. That is on my baseball bucket list, is to get to Yankee Stadium and see a game. But again, we'll just have to wait and see what this season can bring. Can Semien pull it off? Can Semien do it? I'm willing to wait and see before I make a final decision. Like I said in my thank you video to Nimmo, am I going to miss him? Of course. The last couple of years going to Citi Field, I always knew Nimmo was going to be in that lineup. Nimmo was going to be in the outfield, no matter what. I was always going to get to shout out, Nims! And yeah, it's going to change now. Not seeing Nims in the outfield. Not being able to shout out Nims. And then it's going to feel weird, too, when we do play the Rangers this season. Which I gotta check. I don't know if it's a home game or an away game. Part of me is almost hoping maybe it's a home game for us, because, then he'll still get to come back home as a Texas Ranger, and, he can get the thanks that he does rightfully deserve. Because I know the Mets will do something about it, But anyway, that's my thought. That's my ramble about this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys think this was a good trade? Do you guys think it was a bad trade? Who maybe would you have traded Nimmo for? Out of everybody else in Major League Baseball that was out there. I honestly don't know who I would have. I honestly would have kept Nimmo a Met. Personally, like I said, let him be like David Wright. Let him be a Met his entire career, like Jeter was as the Yankees. Jeter never wore another uniform other than the New York Yankees. David Wright never wore another uniform except the New York Mets. I would have let Nimmo be the same. Never wear another uniform except the orange and blue. But not my choice. I don't work for the Mets. I don't work in the Mets front office. I wish I did. But anyway, that's it from me. That's it from Baseball Lover 1984. And as always, I will end this by saying, I will see you at the ball game. Play ball.